This is a 10 things you might be doing that damage your car without you knowing, and it's aimed at drivers of automatic cars. So it will include some aspects to protect the gearbox and lots of other aspects to just protect the engine and ensure the engine's long-term reliability. In the 26 years I've been running Torque Cars, I've had quite a bit of exposure to problems and issues that crop up with cars. Over the years, I've established that a lot of the problems that people face are down to common misunderstandings. They're naughty habits that people get into, or they're just bad driving habits that people have. Most of the problems are preventable. They come down to either bad driving habits, just poor mechanical sympathy, or just outright neglect. In this video, I'm going to highlight the 10 most common issues. We've done these videos before and they've always been quite popular, but there's always been a slant toward manual cars because that's where we were in the UK, but things have moved on. Even in the UK, more people are buying automatic cars and automatic transmissions. Firstly, and I'll let you debate in the comments how significant this is, we've done lots of videos on this. Cold starts or cold engine is not working efficiently. Extra wear and tear is going on in the engine while it is cold. And we accelerate that wear and tear by using the throttle. To use high RPM in this state where the engine is most stressed, most likely to be experiencing wear and tear, is foolish. It's going to reduce the overall lifespan of the engine. Now, if you have a particularly reliable engine, you're probably only going to knock 20 or 30,000 miles off the life, and you probably won't be keeping the car anywhere near that long anyway. So by the time that you go to sell the car, the next owner is going to have the bills to pay to repair the damage that has accumulated through your abuse in cold starting it. Another thing that automatic drivers often do, and that's to ride the brake downhill rather than manually shift into a lower gear. If you have a modern transmission, it's probably going to detect that you are on a declining slope and adjust the gear and choose a lower gear for you. But on many, it doesn't. And just be aware of that. Rather than just ride the brake, which causes excessive heat to build up in the brakes, eventually leading to catastrophic brake failure or brake fade when you need it the most, it's much better to just drop the gear down, to choose a manual gear, or just select sport mode, where it tends to hang on to gears a little longer and you can enjoy a little bit more engine braking, which should arrest the acceleration you would get on that slope. Letting the car idle to warm up. Using idle is not an efficient way to warm up the engine. You'll use a lot more fuel. The engine will generally be a lot colder than if you just got in and drove it, or you applied a little bit of load while you were sitting there. And in most situations, it's best to just get in the car and drive it slowly, or if you're in a very cold area, get in the car, start it, and apply a light throttle. Just make sure there is a little bit of load in there, that we're not using idle to warm up the engine. Lugging the engine, this is where we use the throttle in quite hard measures, and the RPM is particularly low. You might tend to do this perhaps when you hit a hill. Now, an automatic should theoretically choose a lower gear and increase the RPM so you're not lugging it. But in many automatics, manufacturers have chosen a selection point that guarantees lower emissions and better fuel economy. This lugging using full throttle or high throttle at low RPM speeds is causing excessive wear and tear on the engine. The cylinder pressures are much higher under those conditions. You may even start to hear the engine struggling to make the power that you need to get up the hill. Now, if you've got an automatic, you can't do anything about it. Well, you can. In most, you can select a manual gear and just drop down a gear. You could use the kick down function, for example, in some engines, and that will choose a lower gear and will get you up the hill, or just dropping it into sport mode. We find in most cars, sport mode gives you good fuel economy as long as you're gentle with the throttle, but also avoids this problem of lugging at low RPM. Skipping oil changes, no, you're not saving money by stretching your 12-month service out to 14 or 16 months. You're increasing the wear and tear on all of the components in the engine. The oil really is one of the most critical components, and I would recommend that rather than even follow the manufacturer recommendations, we change the oil more frequently. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on that and how often you change the oil. As oil ages and collects contaminants, it degrades. It reduces its ability to lubricate the engine. Another big killer, and I would say this is probably one of the most significant things that degrades the performance of our engine long term, and that's short trips where the engine hasn't got up to operating temperature and it hasn't had an opportunity to cool down to normal operating temperature after spirited driving. We're thinking about the heat cycle, allowing the heat to build up in the engine and to reduce down again. And just doing a short trip, we're putting our engine under a lot more risk, a lot more stress. The oil, as we've already said, is starting to degrade with these short trips. The carbon buildup is going to be much higher doing lots of short trips. Most cars now come with particulate filters. These are going to start to clog up more. On a short trip, you are putting more soot inside the particulate filter than it will ever get to clear off. And eventually you're going to have a completely blocked particulate filter. Catalytic converters also need high temperatures. And this bit where we start the engine to do a short trip will dump a lot more fuel into the exhaust stream, which will go into the catalyst, which will degrade the catalyst. Now, you could argue that is only for a very, very small period of time, but it is cumulative. The more short trips we do, we're never going to burn off all of the moisture that's dropped itself into the engine oil. It's not going to be properly lubricated, and we're just going to be building up a whole host of problems for ourselves. Next, we need to think about the transmission fluid. Some manufacturers are saying that a transmission is sealed for life, even in an automatic. And I would be very skeptical about that. Some of these transmission temperatures get up to 80 or 90 degrees. They run quite hot. And when you have a fluid that is hot, it degrades. Fluid contamination is fairly substantial in most models at about 50 to 100,000 miles. And many manufacturers insist that the performance cars are changed at about 40,000 miles. But certainly you should be thinking about changing your transmission fluid at 60 to 80,000 miles. Another naughty one, and I do see people doing this quite a lot, and that's shifting between reverse and drive while the car is still moving. That puts a big strain on the components within the automatic transmission, the planetary gear sets, the clutch systems, the torque converter. In heavy traffic, we might want to go slowly, and we might be holding the car on the hill, for example, using the throttle rather than bringing the car to a complete stop and engaging the parking brake, the handbrake. There's a tendency to just keep the car balanced on the throttle, and that, if we have a dual clutch transmission, is going to be burning away the clutches inside the transmission. Using the wrong grade of fuel. Now, straight away, we're thinking about octane, obviously. And if your car has been designed for high octane fuel and you use a lower octane, a lot of adjustment is going on inside the engine to allow it to burn that lower octane fuel. It's trying to avoid NOx, and that can actually lead to carbon buildup inside the engine. It can lead to rough running. But expanding this topic a little bit, we've got to think about the modern fuel formulations. We have E10. Many countries also have E15. That is up to 15% or 10% of the fuel is allowed to contain ethanol. If our car's not been designed specifically for these E-enriched fuels, we need to ensure that we use a fuel that has a good reputation for having a low ethanol content, and there does seem to be quite a big variation between the big manufacturers. Another thing we have to think about as well is the additive package within the fuel. People often see the tankers coming out of the fuel depots, and they all come out of the same depot. You've got the branded supermarket Tesco's and you've got the branded Shell coming out of the same place, and they just assume that it's exactly the same thing in each of them. But what they are missing is the additive package that is added. You have the base refined oil, which meets the UK specifications over here, and then each manufacturer have their own additive package to enhance the way the fuel burns, the way the engine is cleaned, and the way that the engine is able to utilize that fuel. And the upshot is at the end that fuel from different manufacturers have different specifications and different characteristics, and it's very hard to say that one is particularly better than another because it's subjective. Different cars, for example German cars or large V8 American cars, may favour different types of fuel because they have different types of additive package. We're not going to be too nerdy and go right into the details, but it's worth just understanding that your car may run better on certain type or certain brands of fuel than it does on others. Listen to that, go with those brands, and let me know in the comments which brands you favour, which you felt have made a big difference to the smoothness or the power delivery of your car, and whether you see any significant benefits with the higher octane fuels that you buy. Thanks for watching. I hope this has been useful and it will enable you to avoid a lot of problems in your car. We did mention cold starts, but there's a whole video here that goes into a lot more detail on cold starts and the problems that you will experience and ways of avoiding those problems and issues. That's probably one of the biggest things that the modern driver has to understand in terms of prolonging the reliability of their car. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. That really does help us, as does booping that like button. And thank you for watching. See you in these next videos on this playlist.